So the word enlightenment gets used a lot, both with me and all over the spirituality world. And my goal really is to make this as mainstream as possible, as basic as it can possibly be, which it should be, because it's the process which I've described is about as simple as it gets. The neuroscience behind it is about as basic and straightforward as it gets. But enlightenment might be a better word, actually. Enlightenment has got a lot of baggage with it, just the word, and but it's, it is the right word ultimately for what I'm talking about here. Yeah, there's a lot of garbage out there with spirituality. There's a lot of BS. People just throw in whatever word they want or whatever meaning they want around as far as what meditation is all about, what the process is about, what ego death or enlightenment means. And I think we need to make this as straightforward as possible if meditation can really catch on in any meaningful way, which it's starting to, but getting your foot in the door is a little different than crossing the finish line, which if you're gonna start meditating, you really should know what the point of this whole thing is. And that's kind of why I put so much emphasis on the neuroscience behind all this. Not because it really changes anything, or but I think it kind of normalizes the whole thing, or it creates a standard for what we're talking about here. And I think once this catches on a bit more in terms of what the default mode network is, how the process of meditation correlates with the default mode network, and the gradual dissolving of the self, I think it will be seen. Hopefully we can kind of clear out all the bullshit that's going on with spirituality and its various forms, and we can just kind of converge on this central point, which is really what I try and do in the book. The first 20 or 30 pages or so really is basically everything you need to know, start to finish. It is really simple stuff, and it should be. Life is not that complicated. We purposely make it that way, unconsciously, usually, not always, but yeah, I think maybe that was a Freudian slip of some kind earlier, but Unlightenment might actually be the best. It might actually be the best word for it. It's enlightenment is not the addition of something that is missing from you. It is the subtraction of something that you have grown continuously accustomed to fueling. Our sense of self has been so continuously reinforced. It's been built and reinforced to such a degree over years that we almost don't even notice that it's there. It just this machine is basically working on autopilot. And so, really, if it's something that we've built over time, which we do, by constructing, the collection of neural networks in our default mode network that constitute me. Just as that is built over time, it can be unbuilt. Fortunately, a lot quicker than it's built. And that is a very straightforward and indisputable process. It's, when our various stories or our thoughts or emotions that rise up that we are accustomed to and we attach to and form our sense of self, we continuously feed this. We provide our energy to it moment by moment, like I said, almost unconsciously. And so that takes a little bit of work at the outset as far as meditation, in terms of shining a light on this, and in terms of becoming aware of just what's happening in our brains when we are at rest. So the process, as I've pointed out or described a couple times, and I'm just going to keep really driving it home because it's not to be repetitive, but it's about as simple as it could possibly be. You just are simply changing course. You're refusing to feed the machine or the self-referential story that we have that goes on pretty much automatically. And this happens thought by thought, moment by moment. It might seem like this difficult, impossible task, but really you don't have to do anything about it. There's no real way of screwing it up other than just continuing to do what you normally do, which keeps yourself intact. We do this, most of us, automatically. We are continuously providing energy to this self. So it isn't that we need to redirect that into some new story and create a new thing about what enlightenment is, or some esoteric spiritual search in some far off world that we need to come to grips to. No, this is right in front of you. It's as simple as it gets. It's just a matter of withdrawing the energy that you would generally lose basically unconsciously, and just allowing yourself to be dissolved. And that happens automatically. You don't have to really do anything. I mean, it seems like you're doing it at first because we're so accustomed to just going for the ride of our story and building this thing. And we're not accustomed to the concept, really, of doing nothing. We're not accustomed to the logic behind that. That if you don't do anything, somehow you're going to arrive at some state. And so this kind of turns it into a means to an end, which is kind of how we traditionally approach this whole thing. But that's not what it's all about. This is a letting go. I'm not sure if you can see me at all at this point. No, too far in now. We're just going to have to stick with it. Or maybe not. My apologies. Damn. Here we go. Decent view over there. Let's go with that. So there's nothing to get here. There's nothing to grab hold of for the mind in terms of information. It is basically stepping into the unknown and just letting yourself go gradually, neural network by neural network, until this sense of separation is dissolved. And by definition, if your sense of separation is removed, then that would be a return to oneness, because there's no longer a self and an other. There's no longer this or that. There's no longer this relentless machine in the mind telling you or keeping you in a state of not being enough or being separated from the world. And this is where we start life from as a child. This is where we go to and sort of flow state activities where the mind is not needed, and we're able to just kind of let go into something that we are pretty comfortable with doing, a sport, for instance, or so yeah, the goal here is basically, in my presentation, is to make this as basic as possible. If it seems too simple, it's try and explain why it would need to be complicated. The mind is complicated. It wants to make things difficult. It wants to create an objection or problem and some other story that you can run off with about some other means that can be chased, some end that can be reached. But that's simply not the case here. It's about the simplest thing imaginable. So yeah, you let yourself go a little bit each day, little piece of the default mode network is disconnected, and over time this whole illusory self that we've created begins to fall apart, or just it it's a muscle atrophy of the brain, basically. It just, because you're not using it, because you're not feeding it anymore, then it simply doesn't have the energy or the momentum to continue itself, so it goes away. And it's really that simple. We have a hard time accepting that, that it could be that easy, or that it could be such a basic thing we've overlooked. But it's hard to imagine a reason why we would need to do all this endless searching for some special answer way out there. It is our natural state, so it's just a returning to that state, to the way we were born into this world, and to what we go back to ultimately. So yeah, as always, any feedback or questions you might have, leave me a comment or shoot me an email over on my website. All right, see you next time.